All right, so Bernie Sanders, all right? Shit is getting real here in California, all right? Panther just telling me about some poll that 90% of Bernie Sanders voters are not planning on backing Hillary if Sanders loses. This is a beautiful, beautiful moment in the history of the species, and I am happy to witness it. I am not a socialist, but I am saying, oh man, if Bernie beats Hillary, this is huge, guys. This is awesome. Serious, this is really a pivotal moment in politics. And again, I would love to see some sort of debate between Trump and Sanders, which now looks like it's going to happen, completely making Hillary Clinton and her criminal ass just irrelevant. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. You know, this woman who is so insanely corrupt that even the blue teamers are like, no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Like, it's beautiful. And, we'll see what happens. There's actually some astrological alignments, like around the June 8th time, corresponding with heightened levels of chaos and instability. So we'll see what happens with the stars literally aligning for something really wild to go down. Here in California with the upset, Hillary Clinton by Bernie Sanders and his supporters, which, this video is going to be tearing down socialism a little bit, just a heads up, but really though, one thing I'd like to say is that I do admire the revolutionary spirit of the Berners, the Bernie Sanders supporters. You might have the completely wrong economic perspective in order to effect true change, but your spirit is something I can work with. I've met, some Bernie Sanders supporters who I definitely agree with in an energetic sense, but where we differ is just our understanding of how the world works, the role of economics, and, how we can actually make the greatest change, instead of asking for big brother, daddy government to just solve it all for us like it always has in the past, right? So this is really about, in one sense, the positive side of this whole Bernie Sanders thing, which is the people rising up against their criminal overlord political masters. And, this is also about the other side of the coin, which is where socialism leads if we follow it through to fruition. And Venezuela is a great, perfect example of what that looks like, okay? It is currently the murder capital of the world. Society is collapsing. And I'm not saying that this is exactly what would happen, like, immediately after Bernie Sanders was hypothetically elected. But down the line, as you mess with the pricing mechanism and you start changing things about the economy, and imposing more rules and controls, even if they're for good intentions, the more you mess with the economy, the more you're going to get these twisted results. This is basically the Austrian perspective of economics, and it reveals a lot of things, useful things about how our society works. And, so basically Venezuela has sold off all of its, currency holdings. They sold off all their gold. They're having shortages of toilet paper, of food, basic medical supplies, the hospitals in Venezuela. It's really tragic, guys. Like, they don't have access to basic supplies. They can't even buy anything abroad because their currency is now hyperinflating. Okay, in the month of May, I think the inflation rate was at 582% or something like that. Imagine you go and buy a loaf of bread, okay, and then 4 weeks later, that loaf of bread is now 5 times the price, almost 6 times the price. This is what they're dealing with. This is called hyperinflation. And it's what happens literally every single time in history that the government tries to just provide all the necessities for everyone by printing money and just, command and control of the economy. It always ends up in this place where the currency gets debased and the people suffer. And the sad and ironic thing is that the Venezuelan people, from the videos and research that I've done, is basically that they don't understand the problem that they're in. They don't understand that government has caused these problems for them, and that the only way out is to roll that sucker back and basically let the market reassert itself as the, invisible hand, right? The organizer of the human activity by allowing millions and millions of different participants to make their own choices, okay? And this is kind of the weird contrast, right? So Bernie Sanders supporters think they're voting for like more power and freedom for themselves because that's the socialist line. That's their shtick, right? Let's make life better for people by government throwing money at some more problems. But I mean, the entire history of government shows that's a stupid idea, frankly. Like, sorry if that hurts your feelings, but you got to hear this stuff because even if Bernie Sanders isn't elected, even Trump, like, I'm not sure if he has a fundamental grasp of economic theory, but, you know, you're playing with fire when you ask the government to do things for you. And if we just take a second and look back at all the promised wonderful things, that the government and its mouthpieces promise, they don't come to fruition. Where's the Great Society of Lyndon B. Johnson, right? Like, where's the war on poverty? Poverty's now dead and gone, right? Like, the war on cancer, the war on drugs, the war on terror. All of these things just make more of what they're supposedly fighting. So, by that logic, why don't we have a war on prosperity? And then, we'll actually start all getting richer, maybe. But so Venezuela is a great example of what happens to society when you interfere with the economy systematically under socialism and try and give people free shit. Okay, it sounds wonderful, but this is where it leads. The government prints the money to pay for the services, and basically the currency hyperinflates, and the people suffer because they cannot afford basic necessities. And in a slow motion way, this has been happening in the United States as a direct result of increasing welfare, warfare state. And with Bernie Sanders, we would just see that accelerate until the final endpoint, which is a currency crisis, when basically somebody's not getting paid. There's trillions of dollars of U.S. debt, and at a certain point, people are going to have to realize somebody ain't getting paid. Whether it's the Social Security recipients not getting paid, the Chinese not getting paid, the Federal Reserve is holder of the huge amount of the debt, and if they don't get paid, then that completely obliterates the value of the currency in a different way. So you really don't have any good options at this point, America. I'm sorry to say. Even if Ron Paul got elected in 2012, there's so much momentum here that, I mean, in my opinion, which is not pessimistic, I believe that there has to be a healing crisis. I believe that the system, as it's running this crony capitalist, big government, big business, unholy alliance, it has to collapse. And in a sense, there has to be a currency crisis. It is the natural equivalent of what the body would do, like in response to toxic elements building up in it. It has to have a fever, it has to have a headache, and it has to increase the temperature and purge all these toxic elements. And that's what really, in the macroeconomic body, what that looks like is a collapse, okay? But what happens after the collapse if you don't have daddy government coming in and trying to save the fucking day like they always do? Is basically deflation happens. The Federal Reserve, the central bank's worst nightmare. Prices start going down. Oh my God, what happens when prices go down? I don't know, for me that sounds pretty great. I'm a big fan of deflation, right? I like when prices go down because it makes it easier for me to buy them. But in a propped up pseudo economy like we have, that's the end of the game, because when all of a sudden the prices aren't propped up and inflated anymore, they collapse. And so the people who have made all of these banking little investments on top of it, all of a sudden all of this loans, this credit comes crashing down. And we can either invite that sooner, like actually even Trump has even mentioned a sort of default on the debt, which again has to happen. You can keep kicking a can down the road, but you know what happens is eventually that road ends. And everyone who kept kicking that can goes over the edge with it. So I hope to just reinvigorate the spirits of the Bernie Sanders supporters, but to, poke and prod and tickle your mind a little bit and realize that socialism is not a paradisical philosophy. You can look at Mao's China or Stalin's Russia. I mean, Cuba, yeah, they got healthcare and they got a high literacy rate, which is not the result of socialism. It's a result of real human community and being connected to nature and, basically being as sovereign as you can be. That's totally beside politics, okay? Being as sovereign as you can be and producing your life necessities exists anywhere that humans actually take command of their own environment and determine their own destiny, you know, instead of being thrown about by the wind like all the Bernie Sanders supporters ultimately want to be. I just want to be given everything. I don't want to have to do anything. I don't want to work. I just want to be handed money, okay? You know what the cost of that is? Your freedom. You don't get to make any decisions when all the decisions are made for you. And that is the danger of socialism. Look to Venezuela for permanent mental proof of that. And so let's take down Hillary, but let's not delude ourselves and think that, la la la, yes, government's gonna give us everything, it's gonna be great. So we'll see what happens, you know, with Bernie. I'm watching, and I hope you are too, because these are truly historic times. So cheers, brothers and sisters, wholeness and balanced vibrations to you all.